All right. So I would like to know first, or I guess we can start with, because we were just kind of talking about ancient animals, especially in North America, the plausibility of any of these like special cryptids or these things that people talk about or tell stories about, like what the likelihood of them being able to survive in today's environment. And I guess we probably actually should define cryptid first, if you want to give a
Well, give me a specific one.
let's start with the lake monsters, like a flathead lake monster, or obviously like a Loch Ness monster or something like that. But there's, I guess, a couple lake ones in the US.
Well, okay, here's the first bit. Take any lake monster that is supposedly a surviving marine reptile. I don't care which one. Could be a mosasaur, could be a plesiosaur, could be a tanystrophiid, because I see them throw that one out with Champ quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Take all of those, bundle them up, and throw it out the window. No, there are no marine reptiles alive today. It'd be awesome if there were, but the only marine reptiles in the modern ocean are marine iguanas in Galapagos, several types of crocodile, which can tolerate salt water, marine snakes, and sea turtles. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that we know marine reptiles did not survive the mass extinction that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs 65 million years ago is there are no fossils afterwards. And before someone brings up coelacanths, because everyone knows about the miraculous fish, there are coelacanth fossils in between now and 65 million years ago. Quite a few, actually. It's just those weren't found at the time the live animal was dredged up. First in Madagascar and then Indonesia. That's why it was such a shock. Another thing about reptiles is they are constantly shedding their teeth. You hear about alligators replace their teeth a lot. Lizards and snakes do that too.
Mm-hmm. So
your average plesiosaur would probably have about 40 teeth in its mouth at any given time. Each of those teeth is going to get replaced every couple of weeks to a couple of months. So in that animal's lifetime, it's going to go through a couple hundred to a few thousand teeth. Teeth fossilize very well because nothing eats them. They're very hard, pretty malleable when it comes to getting fitted inside the sediment that will fossilize with them. So they don't rot off that much.
Yeah. They're basically bone, correct?
They're dentin covered in enamel. Dentin is the second hardest material in the body, and enamel is the hardest. So they're actually harder than bone. They're pretty much rock. Your teeth are essentially metal and rock.
Sweet.
So let's do a little math here. Let's say your average marine reptile goes through 1,000 teeth in its lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep up a healthy population, you're going to need at least 200 individuals. At most given times, the number can vary, but typically to avoid catastrophic inbreeding problems, you need about 200 individuals. So let's assume only 200 survive the mass extinction. That's about 20,000 teeth within the next 100 years.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Now, because they have no predators, their population is going to explode. So let's lowball it and say 1 million years later, there are 250,000 individuals. That's an extreme lowball, by the way. And every single one of those individuals goes through 1,000 teeth. That means there are over 250 million teeth being shed every year.
Okay.
And we haven't found a single fossil.
Yeah. So now what explains all these lake monsters?
Mistaken identity.
Okay.
The big problem with eyewitness reports is even a trained witness can be wrong.
Yes.
And I can give a good example on this. I had a school teacher who was a retired police officer. So somebody who's trained at making rapid observation and reacting to it.
Mm.
They came to the museum one day, and in the museum is an animatronic dinosaur. All this animatronic does is move its head up and down and swing its tail. It does not move from its spot. It does not throw its body about. It doesn't even make noise. And yet the guy swore up and down when I surprised him. I got him to stand in front of it, and then I secretly hit the button to make it move. He said it charged him. And the kids also said it charged him. Even when I demonstrated the thing's feet are bolted into the ground, he still swore he remembered it charging. So when people get startled, they are not good eyewitnesses. Far from it.
Yeah.
Especially when they're confronted by something unusual. Here's a fairly big lake sturgeon. This is from Flathead Lake.
Oh, that's where we're from.
Nice. Okay. Wow. Holy cow.
The biggest great white sturgeon found in North America was about 14 feet long.
That's a fucking huge fish.
That's incredibly huge.
And they have this image that fits the popular image of the prehistoric. They're armor plated. They got sharp scales. They can undulate their body. And if you caught that at a glimpse, and the sturgeon you're used to looking at are maybe 3 or 4 feet long, you're going to swear up and down you saw something different.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
that's true.
And here's a little something I also cooked up with marine reptiles. When we think marine reptiles, we instantly think that they must be gigantic. They're huge. They're much bigger than any predator in the ocean alive today, right?
Mm-hmm.
The killer whale is actually significantly bigger than most marine reptiles. A one-on-one fight between an orca and a mosasaur, the orca is going to rip it apart. The world record bull orca was several thousand pounds heavier than the current biggest mosasaurus fossil we have.
Dude, that Leviathan is a massive...
Leviathan was a prehistoric sperm whale that was hunting both other whales and megalodon. This thing was able to eat a megalodon. It had teeth about as long as my forearm.
I fucking hate the ocean so much, dude.
As my friend put it, everyone gangsta till the cetaceans showed up.
Oh my god. These things are crazy.
And he's huge.
Yeah. Leviathan is probably the biggest marine predator that has ever existed. At least when you're going into macro predators, not filter feeders like the blue whale.
Right.
And sheer size, the only thing that rivals it is the modern sperm whale.
Now, were humans around when this thing was around?
Leviathan went extinct 2 million years ago, so while Homo sapiens weren't around, our earliest ancestors, like the earliest forms of genus Homo, were around.
Yeah.
So Homo habilis, for instance.
Mm-hmm. And so they didn't probably run into this too often, I imagine.
Thankfully not. Yeah, here, I think that last link bugged here. Here's a better one. If you want to see what a Leviathan looked like in the flesh.
Okay, let's see here.
But had marine reptiles survived the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs, they would have diversified again.
Yeah.
Even if there was just one species, that species could engender a bunch of different ones. They would spread back out. Because there would be free reign over the ocean. They wouldn't have any big competition. And a whole lot of food once the fish stocks bounce back. So whales never would have even really existed because those early amphibious marine predators that they came from would have no incentive to keep going further and further into the ocean because there'd be a lot of competition. So had marine reptiles continued on into the modern age, whales probably never would have evolved.
Now, with these lake monsters, though, lake monsters, the eyewitnesses that are talking about these massive sizes, like in the Flathead Lake, the big thing is that there's all these like deep caves, and there's this massive thing that's been seen that's like bigger than most boats that are out there. And I'm on board with the sturgeon thing, but you think that that is enough to make them imagine this thing that's spectacularly larger than that?
Well, here's the question. Are they actually seeing a living entity? Because most of the reports I see when they talk about a stupendously big entity, they only really saw the water moving. They didn't actually see something burst from the water. At most, they might have seen a hump.
Yeah.
And distinguishing what's a wave and what's a hump is very hard, even for a trained witness.
Okay.
And when you have cases of people getting startled, the worst thing we are accurate at judging is size.
Right.
There has been a psychological evaluation on people who were the victims of muggings with armed robbery. Almost every single time, the witness overestimated the size of the gun they had pointed at them. Because when your brain registers something dangerous, it exaggerates the size of it so that you register the danger and try to go away from it. Ask anybody who's been startled by a bear in the woods. They will tell you the biggest bear I've ever seen came charging at me, even if maybe that bear was about average sized, actually.
Yeah, well, living up here in Montana, let me tell you, going hunting, I remember back in the day when we first started going hunting, we'd see a deer or a buck in the woods, and it'd be like, oh, that was such a massive buck. And then we'd see it again, and it was like, it wasn't that big. It's just the initial response, and your brain just goes, that's huge.
There is this old story of this old woman on Flathead Lake who said she saw this thing climb out of the water and walk onto her property and go back into the water again.
Well, yeah, you want to know what a plesiosaur out of the water is?
What?
Dead.
Yeah.
We have multiple fossils nowadays showing that the marine reptiles, which are not one group, by the way, there's multiple different groups. The mosasaurs, like the one that you see in the Jurassic World movies, are actually true lizards. They are close cousins of monitor lizards like the Komodo dragon, whereas the plesiosaurs are a completely different family entirely. But all of them developed the ability to give birth to live young, specifically because they were too heavy and too weak-limbed to get out of the water and lay their eggs like sea turtles. So if a plesiosaur or ichthyosaur or mosasaur tried to crawl onto land, it would beach itself like a whale and suffocate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I guess what you said about that, the idea of like needing a surviving population too, like one just, I imagine, couldn't survive on its own.
Nah. You'd need a pretty hefty amount.
Yeah.
I'm also familiar with some of the Native American legends around Flathead Lake, like the Kutenai traditional legend. And while it's often cited by some cryptozoologists as some of the earliest Flathead Lake monster reports, their lake monster is very decidedly mammalian. It's got hair, sometimes it has hooves, and often has antlers. And this Flathead Lake monster is starting to sound suspiciously like a moose.
Yeah.
Which anybody who's been around moose knows they love the water.
Yep. They do love to swim, those damn paddle heads. They only swim with their head out too occasionally, and just your horns. The horns is all you can see.
I've had a buddy who was diving up near British Columbia, and a moose surprised him at like 30 feet down. He was just turning his head, and suddenly he's got this moose right up against his mast because it was going for the water plants, and then it bolted and had to get away because an orca came in and was trying to eat it.
Jesus Christ. Dude, I'm not, by the time we're done this conversation, I almost guarantee you I'm not going in any body of water after this, dude. How do you get stuck between two really dangerous animals. Moose kill a bunch of people every year.
Yeah.
They're super dangerous.
And the only reason orca don't kill a bunch of people is they're smart enough to know it's not worth it.
Yeah.
We actually don't know how powerful an orca can bite. There was a attempted study on great white sharks to figure out their bite force.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this target. It was made to look like a dead seal, so they were going to have the shark come in and bite down on it.
Yeah.
Well, an orca scared off the sharks and then bit into the target and destroyed the meter. And the last thing it registered was about 19,000 pounds per square inch. For record, a big saltwater crocodile has a bite force of around 6,000.
Holy cow.
If an orca bit me across the middle, I would pop like a grape.
Dude. Just swimming animals, man. Those. So, okay.
Nasty.
I can't even. That's insane, dude. Just. And they know they don't kill people, which is mind-blowing to me, too. It's just that there's, like, other than in captivity, like, no examples of an orca killing a human.
I only know of one wild attack, and it seemed less like it was trying to kill the guy and more just trying to make him go away.
Yeah, because what you're telling me about this animal's bite force and stuff, like if it was attacking, a human's not winning that battle.
Yeah. No, just no. And the captivity of the horrible thing about it happened was the orca probably wasn't actually trying to kill its trainer, but it was an animal that was raised in a bad way because that animal, SeaWorld got it. It was at a previous place that was not treating it very well. And SeaWorld, they do the best they can, but they just can't replicate a wild environment for an animal that big.
Yeah.
So it was trying to play with a 150-pound woman the same way it would play with another 9-ton orca. And this is not going to be a good day for anybody.
Yeah. Silly humans never learn.
But yeah, there's your pessimism there. If any marine reptiles survived the KT, I'm pretty sure the cetaceans would have taken them out.
Yeah. No, I'm on board with that. That makes sense. That's probably like the least. I mean, that's my least believed cryptid. Is the Flathead Lake monster. It's just such a popular story from where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when you lived on Flathead for years and years, and I don't know,
you're into it.
Yeah.
And I also want to emphasize something. I'm not ever calling anybody a liar or
but
stupid.
There's some straight up stupid liars, though.
Oh, there's plenty of those. But some people say, well, my granddad was firefighter for dozens of years, and he would have no reason to lie about this, or my grandma was seen as an honorable matron of the community. Why would she lie about this? I'm not even saying they lied. I don't think they did. It's just you can't really trust your eyes on these sort of things.
Yeah. No, I'm with that.
There was another North American cryptid. I remember a good study on this. It was the Mothman.
Dude, I meant to message you about that today. I wanted to be like, hey, we should talk about the Mothman, because that's been actually coming up a lot lately. I've been hearing a lot about Mothman sightings in like New Jersey and stuff.
Yeah, he's going on a world tour, you see.
Yeah.
Well, it was done by a skeptic, and what they did was they created several Mothman-sized cutouts, and they put them on sides of the road, and they drove people past them at night with none of the headlights on. So the passenger did not know where the cutouts would be, which side of the road they'd be on, when they'd spring up, etc. One cutout was about a foot tall. One cutout was about 3 feet tall. And one cutout was about 6 feet tall. Without fail, every single person overestimated the size of the 3 and 1 foot size cutout. They would say the 1 foot was about 1 meter tall, and they would say the 3 foot tall was actually closer to 5 or 6 feet tall.
Wow.
Because when your brain only has so much time to register something, and when it goes, hey, I don't know what this is, make it big, it might be dangerous, don't get near it, it's going to exaggerate the size.
Sure.
And we do know from around the same time that the Mothman sightings were happening, somebody shot a snowy owl. And Some people might think, oh, what's the big deal about an owl? Snowy owls are actually really big.
Huge.
I've been around them before, and they're about the size of some eagles.
Yeah.
And if you're really not familiar with them, and you suddenly see this big white shape in front of you, your brain is going to go firing on all cylinders, wondering what the heck is that?
Yeah.
And because this animal was outside its natural range, its behavior would have been abnormal. So there's your Mothman, considering most of the sightings actually stopped after the owl got shot. The whole Silver Bridge thing was a very unfortunate coincidence.
Mothman evidence was weak, in my opinion, anyway.
Not to mention the description they gave.
Yeah.
Where it's man-sized, yet it only had about a 15-foot wingspan and could fly at 80 miles an hour. That's physically impossible.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you use science, I guess, you know.
Which science is just
fun out of it.
buzzkill. It's the biggest buzzkill.
I like it, but I hate it.
Something I always find funny about the Mothman was it got its name literally from Batman.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what to call it at first, but the Batman Adam West Batman 66 show was popular at the time. So people started calling it Mothman because of that.
Oh, stupid name. All right. I'm going to save the best for last, but I want to know your thoughts on the old chupacabra.
Well, if you're wanting to know, can an animal that size subsist entirely on blood? No. Heck no.
Why not?
Very much no. Blood is a very odd nutrient. On one level, it's very nutritious because everything your body needs is going to be in blood.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
By the contrary, you have to eat a lot of blood to be able to sustain yourself. This is why vampire bats are actually really, really small. The biggest vampire bat is smaller than the smallest fruit bat. And your typical vampire bat, they only have a wingspan of a couple of inches.
Oh, wow.
And they have to drink almost their entire body weight in blood every other night just to survive.
You tell me that little bat can turn into a human being?
Nope. Because then, man, Dracula would have to be really going to town.
I was about to say.
Dude. He's not going to be drinking the blood of like some fair maiden every other night by sipping at her neck. No, he's going to have to be chugging cows.
Yeah, cattle mutilation. That's it.
I mean, here, this is a picture of a vampire bat from a zoo just to show you how small they are. They're very tame. Also, I've held one, and it took a nap on me.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah, that is cute.
Oh,
they're kind of ugly cute. They are so ugly that they're cute.
Yeah, they're like every pug I've ever seen.
They also really don't like mammal blood that much. They much prefer bird blood.
Really?
Is there any theories as to why that is?
They just seem to prefer the taste. If you give them an option between, say, cow blood, human blood, and chicken blood, they always go for the chickens.
Will they drink? They'll still drink mammalian blood, though, right? If they need to.
If they need to, and it's the only thing available.
Yeah.
Humans are like last resort. They seem to actively go against picking humans.
Wow.
So consider it, little buggers.
Man.
As for chupacabra, the thing about blood is you can ask many hunters who've made a kill, of which I can ask you, how long does a carcass actually stay bloody if it's just exposed to the elements?
Oh, yeah.
The blood's going to coagulate in the veins pretty quick.
Oh, super quick.
If it doesn't drain out into the ground, because I know I'm a hunter, I've gone hunting, I got family that are hunt. If the hunter doesn't, say, carve into the arteries and intentionally dump some of the blood out, that stuff coagulates within a few hours. So reports of there was no blood on the wounds No duh. The blood's not going to be there. It's going to turn into a brownish, goopy mass in a few hours, and then it's going to turn hard as a rock.
Okay.
So the
no
whole thing of
chance
it
it's
being
eating
the whole thing of it being the goat sucker, and the goats are drained of blood, that's complete bogus.
And there's no stories saying that it's getting nutrition somewhere else in addition to blood, so it doesn't have to eat so much blood. Like, is there a chance of some type of evolution due to this type of like
There's no
size
real
versus
advantage
food
to it.
requirement? Yeah.
As I said, the biggest vampire bat we have ever for fossils only went extinct relatively recently, but even then, when they say giant vampire bat, they mean in reference to the tiny little bugger I just sent you.
Yeah.
If you put your hands together in the classic making a little Tweety bird pose for shadow puppets, the span of your hands is bigger than that bat.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a strict size requirement.
But could a chupacabra have evolved to eat something else and then only occasionally suck blood from goats?
Well, the whole thing about sucking blood from the goats is the blood's just going to be coagulating.
Yeah.
So is it even sucking blood? What we have here is a predator that is surplus killing, and that does happen. What often happens in this case is the animal gets stuck in an enclosed environment like a chicken coop or a goat pen, and that kill instinct of, if the prey is running away from me, attack, keeps getting activated over and over again, because it makes the kill, it's gearing down to eat, but then the rest of the goats in the pen start running away from it. Its instinct fires off again, attack, and it just keeps going to town. You can see this in sheep pens. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 coyotes killed 5 or 6 sheep. So what you have there is surplus killing, and we always see the same thing: 2 bites in the throat or grasping at the leg. One thing you don't often hear in the reports is there are a lot of groin bites.
So we're talking cat, huh?
Cat or canine. Canines go for the groin quite a bit.
Groin a lot?
Yeah, I've seen like trail cam video of coyotes going after deer. They just, to use some foul language, dogs go straight for your dick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of arteries down there. It's really soft. So most of the chupacabra reports can be pretty easily summarized as surplus killing by various types of felines, canines, and even monkeys, like rhesus macaques have been known to do this. And there are thousands of rhesus macaques in Puerto Rico.
Huh.
I also know there's rhesus macaques here in the Silver River, Florida, near Ocala. They got introduced here back in the 30s as a tourist attraction. Now there's thousands of them. And they'll kill chicken.
There's monkeys running around Florida just in the wild.
3 different species. We got squirrel monkeys in a few small spots, but they're pretty reclusive. There's velvet monkeys near Fort Lauderdale, and there's these rhesus macaques are everywhere in the central part near this big national forest called Ocala.
Is this like? Am I an idiot for not knowing this? Because I feel like I didn't even.
A lot of Floridians don't know about
America.
A lot of Floridians don't know about this until they go to Silver Springs and wonder why there are monkeys everywhere.
That's crazy.
What happened back in the 30s was the Tarzan movies, the old black and white Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies got really popular. So to enhance this river cruise that had been operating in this beautiful area called Silver Springs, where the water is crystal clear, a boat captain put about 20 rhesus macaques on an island.
Fucking pirates.
Because what he assumed was he had talked to zoos and he said, well, how do you house your apes? And they said, oh, you just put a moat around them. Apes really don't like water. Rhesus macaques live in a swamp. So not even before he got the boat revved up to go away, they had already jumped in the water and were swimming to shore and began pillaging the picnic tables. And here's actually a video of a whole troop of monkeys cannonballing into the water to swim across the river.
Monkey videos. One of my favorites.
Oh, be careful. They can carry herpes, though.
That's good to know.
Yeah, don't let them bite you. So this is like somebody was on the kayak tour. And I've been on the kayak tour, and I've seen the monkeys too. So just give it about, you get your first clear view of them about 15 seconds in. You can see them start swimming across the water.
Holy shit. What? Are they? Is that them jumping into the water?
Yeah, they'll jump into the water and swim across. Rhesus macaques are really adaptable. Back in Asia, they live in everything from swamps to jungles to mountains, so they can swim really good.
Mm-hmm.
And they get big too. The males can get over like 25, 30 pounds.
Monkeys.
Monkeys.
Dude, I gotta go to Florida. Dude, there's so much shit going on in Florida right now.
Hey, come down to the museum. We'll give you a tour.
Yes. Oh, that's insane. So I'm really pumped because like monkeys used to be in North America, right? And from what I understand, there actually used to be like some form of, oh, I still got that thing playing.
You still got the audio going.
There must be some form of ancient ape or primate that lived in Montana, like way, way, way back, right?
We're talking super, super far back. Primates got their start in the New World, more specifically in North America. Just after the dinosaurs went extinct, you have a lot of these kind of like they're called predapids, and they're sort of like a proto-primate. They're the very earliest version. Okay. They're not monkeys, and they're not apes. They would look closest to a lemur. Okay. And if you want an idea of what they would look like, the closest animal that resembles them today is called a mouse lemur. And here's a picture of one of those cute little guys.
I believe I've heard of them.
They can fit in the palm of your hand. They are very small.
Oh. Yep, I've seen those little buggers before.
But if you look close, they do have the basic primate traits. They have forward-facing eyes. They got fleshy ears that aren't covered in hair. Got opposable thumbs. But those primates went extinct about 35-ish million years ago. North America dried out. The jungles went away. But by that point, they had spread into Asia. So from about 35 million years ago to 15 or so million years ago, or to 20 million, somewhere in that range, no primates in the New World pretty much whatsoever. Then monkeys started appearing in Africa, into Asia, Europe, and some of them actually rafted across the Atlantic, which at the time was much smaller, from Africa into South America. That's where you get stuff like the spider monkeys, howler monkey, squirrel monkey.
Sure.
And you can see this in their form. No old world monkeys have opposable tails. With the whole prehensile tail where they can use it as another limb, that's only the New World ones. And the New World monkeys stayed in South America, and some of them started to spread into southern North America once Panama linked the two continents together, but they got stopped by the desert, so they actually did not reach places like Florida, Montana, California. And on a strict fossil record basis, the only ape to reach North America is humans. Because apes, for the most part, don't like cold climate.
Yeah.
Now, I say that for the most part because I have a little bit of an idea, and I'm going to talk about that one.
Real, right? That's what you're saying.
I have an idea where they might, if there is something out there, either in recent history or now, it might not be what people think it is.
Okay.
No, I've heard of some speculation being that it's a mix between a brown bear and a polar bear.
Well, those animals, nicknamed either a growler bear or a pizzly.
Pizzly?
Yep. The rule with hybrid animals is you put the father's name first and then the mother's name. So if it's a male polar bear on female grizzly action, it's a pizzly bear.
I feel like that's something that somebody came
man.
up with in the moment.
Well, I mean, here is a picture of a pizzly.
Oh,
You may laugh.
oh, oh my gosh. Oh.
Sorry if the links are a little bit hard to see.
Oh my god.
I think
But-
it's cute as all get out. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, you can see some of the brown bear traits
Yeah.
and the
yeah.
polar traits.
I feel like the
His-
polar is definitely the more dominant.
Yeah, and here is the inverse. Here is a growler bear.
That's
So
got way
this is
better
a
name.
male grizzly with a female polar bear.
Okay.
Now, an unusual bear, that can certainly explain some of the sightings.
Yeah.
I know there's like a dime a dozen people say that it never went down on all fours. Bears always run on all fours. Most of the time.
Yeah.
Animals will do weird things for no apparent reason, and sometimes they'll do weird things for a reason. There was a bear in New Jersey called Pedals, and he got that name because he lost one of his arms in a trap, and he got around by walking on his hind legs all the time.
I mean,
There's
dogs
some
do it.
videos of there's some videos of him doing it online. It's freaky as hell to look at.
So is that what you think this would be more likely than not?
I think some Bigfoot reports are definitely it was a bear walking on its hind legs. Sometimes they do it for a long time. And if you're not used to seeing bears doing this and you suddenly see it do it, it's going to look really weird.
Yeah.
And part of it is also your brain. Your brain thinks, what are the upright animals that walk on their hind legs that I know of?
Yeah.
They'll think human. So if your
Whoa.
brain caught a glimpse of something moving in a weird way and you didn't register what it was, your brain's going to remember more human traits.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really funny looking, but yeah, I could see how that would be very weird looking right off the bat. Like,
Yeah.
So I would like I could see where like if a person's walking through the woods and they see that, they're gonna be like, oh, that's strange, and they're gonna be probably compare it to like a humanoid type figure. However, that still doesn't walk quite like a human. Like the arms don't move, you know, so it's like very much still like a really stiff movement, and a lot of this like footprint would not match up with that of a bear, right? Because I know like bear paw prints don't look like human paw prints.
Most of the
Human.
time, if a bear is walking on its hind legs and it's rolling its foot,
Mm-hmm.
or it's walking on all fours and the front foot superimposing over the back, it actually can produce a very human-like track.
Wouldn't you still
Especially
see like claw marks above?
If
the
it's a
digits,
really
though?
pebbly ground, no, you won't see the claws.
I guess that's true.
I've seen on that in swampy ground too. I've tracked black bears
Mm-hmm.
through Ocala National Forest and I never saw any claws. Yet I could clearly see the bear that was making it, so it's not like I was looking at skunk ape tracks and didn't know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Now, that's not going to explain all of it. I'm just saying a chunk of the sightings are probably people misidentifying bears, people at a distance,
Mhm.
hikers, homeless people, maybe even a guy playing a prank.
No.
There are cases, however, that do make me do it a little bit of a double take. And those are the ones that I think on it and go, this only makes sense if it's something else. Or if this was a hoaxer, he's got one hell of a death wish.
mm-hmm.
Because you'll have cases of, say, multiple people reporting, seeing a Bigfoot walking along a firing range where hunters are sighting in their guns. Either that guy under the monkey suit's got like 15 layers of Kevlar and nothing to lose, or that's not a guy in a monkey suit, because nobody's going to be that stupid.
So you're saying is only one report of this ever happening? But
I've heard a couple of reports of people
Really?
with firearms or really out of the ways reporting seeing Bigfoot, and it just seems like if this was a hoax, this is such a dangerous hoax to do. I don't think anyone in their right mind would do it. I know of a couple of those from the Falk Monster incident, Legend of Boggy Creek, where you had sightings by hunters on private property. So it's already fenced in. Barely anybody out there. If you're going to be hoaxing anybody in a monster suit, why would you go out of your way to go somewhere where almost no one's going to see you, and the few people who will see you probably have a gun on them?
Yeah.
Good question.
I'm always wondering, like, why the fuck would a guy dress up in an ape suit and go out into the woods to scare one family of like 2 toddlers and a grown woman? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense to me.
If I was going to prank people with a monkey suit, I would go to like a campground or something, somewhere I know people are going to see me, because I'm going to be that much of an attention whore.
Would that be a little too obvious, though?
It might be a little too obvious, but you could even just stretch it out. If you don't want to go tramping around in the middle of a mobile home or trailer park, just go to like the fringes of it. A lot of wild animals come to the fringes of places anyways.
Yeah, that's true. Because to do it in the woods too, like how long you'd have to be out there to actually get someone to come, like to see you and to have something to photograph you or whatever. Like you could be out there for fucking weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, you go.
I was just saying, so what do you think could explain these things more than just like the bear sighting and stuff like that?
Well, let's put all those in a cluster. So we'll say bear sightings, other animals, miscellaneous misidentification, because you can have a lot of stuff. Somebody seeing a moose from behind, for instance, where you can't see it's on all fours, and it's just walking into the brush. All you see is this big brown blob. People seeing canines walking on their hind legs. If there's one cryptid I will never believe in, it is the dog man.
The dog man? I haven't even heard of the dog man.
Like a werewolf kind of deal?
YouTube definitely has heard about it, because I think there's like 15 odd YouTube channels talking about people saying, oh yeah, I was at the Mesa and I was at this house party with 40 some people, and then Dogman came out of nowhere and started roaring and chasing everyone with their cars. And I think, this happened and the National Guard didn't get called. Why? Yeah, sure, buddy. This definitely happened.
Yeah.
And as somebody mentioned earlier, canines walk on their hind legs. They can do it. Yep. And if you're not used to seeing a coyote or a wolf walking on its hind legs, firstly, you don't register just how big they get. Secondly, you're not going to register that that's just a normal animal doing a weird thing. It's going to look like some kind of monster.
True.
So you have that factor. Then you also have people misidentifying humans. We're bipedal primates. We can get mistaken for a bipedal primate at a distance. Might be hoaxers, might be campers, hunters, guys in a ghillie suit.
This is a pretty convincing video we see.
The Patterson Gimlin film, yes.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that in a moment. I was just posting it for posterity.
So I want to kind of jump back to the Yeti for just a hot second.
Yeah, I got some Yeti.
There was a track that was found. It was in Nepal, in the Himalayas. And I think it was in 1951. There was, here we go. A British explorer named Eric Shipton. He found a track. Is that it? No, that's not it.
The second one should be.
Okay, get the second one up. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting print.
It's a very weird looking print.
How do you interpret this? I'm curious.
Well, I would say one clue is to look at the trackway itself. I just linked it. You might notice one oddity is this creature was half-stepping, assuming it's a biped. Half step is you take your left foot, you step forward, you put your right foot up to your left foot, You step forward with your right foot, you put your left foot up to your right foot. In not doing the full stride where you put your left foot in front of the right, then right foot in front of the left, this half stepping doesn't really make any sense for a biped. Yeah. We've never seen this in primate tracks, never seen it in human tracks when we're trying to move anywhere at any pace. The only places where we see tracks that look like they're half stepping is when it's a quadruped's track that have been misinterpreted as a biped's. Now, does that mean these are, say, bear, mountain goat, snow leopard, antelope tracks? Not necessarily. The Eric Shipton tracks are weird because they do somewhat resemble a biped, and they do somewhat resemble a primate's foot. However, there is a bit of a caveat. Some of the tracks that Eric Shipton pictured actually might be two different tracks superimposed on each other. And the reason I say that is, look at this diagram I have here, where what seem to be the smaller toes of a big foot might actually just be the toes of another foot that's superimposed over the first one.
Yeah.
I see.
That would explain why the tracks keep warping and changing shape.
You can almost see like that heel print in the heel of that original one now that you pointed out.
Yep.
And the thing about the Yeti is, while it's often taken as the abominable snowman, which is actually a funny mistranslation of what it was eventually supposed to be.
What was it supposed to be?
Yeti was meant to it's a general term, but generally just means mountain animal. It doesn't necessarily mean abominable snowman. It just means mountain beast or nasty beast that lives up in the mountains. It's a pretty general term. It kind of be like me saying mammal.
Yeah.
Yeah, which one? It's not necessarily described as very human-like when you really look at the older Tibetan descriptions. This is kind of an example of what's called colonialist mythology, and that is essentially, and I hate to say it this way, but European and American white explorers going into a foreign area and saying, oh, these silly locals, they have this myth, but I know what they're really looking at. This is the creature that we're actually looking for. There's another example of this in cryptozoology, and that's the Mokele Mbembe. It's a creature from the Congolese area around Lake Tele in Central Africa. And if you know what the original translation was, the old translation means weird creature or mystery creature. It's a catch-all term for any general odd animal. And the oldest descriptions of it have it stout body, thick neck, broad head, big horn on the nose, 3 toes. This is sounding very suspiciously like a rhino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And rhinos do not live in the Congo. I know a lot of people have the idea that, oh, it's an African rhino, so it must live in the rainforest. Not really. African rhinos are more savanna creatures. They did live in the Congo thousands of years ago, and once in a blue moon, one might end up wandering into it, but they just generally don't live there.
Mm-hmm.
However, colonialist explorers in late 1800s, early 1900s, during the big dinosaur boom, where dinosaurs were prevalent in pop culture thanks to works like the Lost Worlds novel and then book, they took it to be a brontosaurus because one description gave it a long neck. I like to remind people that brontosaurus does definitely not have a horn.
Yeah.
And while old depictions of sauropods did have it with the multi-toed foot, where they leave the big claw marks in their footprints, modern fossils show that sauropod feet were pretty much like elephant feet. They were kind of just, the toes were all fused into a mitten of sorts.
No.
So if you saw sauropod's footprints, it looks like this big circle. But the colonialist viewpoint at the time was Africa is the dark continent. It's barely progressed in the millions of years. The Congo is never changing. And dinosaurs like living in rainforests, right? And this is the biggest rainforest we can find in the area, so this must be where the dinosaurs are. Sauropods actually hate rainforests. They like dry areas. They're pretty bad swimmers. And the Congo rainforest, as it is now, only existed for a few thousand years. Go back 10,000 years, that whole place was almost savanna.
Yeah.
But the thought point at the time was these explorers knew better than the silly locals that they were speaking with. Therefore, monster. Now, this isn't me throwing Eric Shipton under the bus. He was a great explorer, and he was actually pretty fair to the Tibetan people. When he came forward about the tracks, he was pretty agnostic about the whole thing. He was adamant that he didn't fake it, but he didn't really ever definitively say these are Yeti, humanoid-looking monster.
Yeah.
He more or less just stated, I was on the mountain and I found these weird-looking tracks.
Did anybody ever make
the closest
like, some
I
kind
could
of
say
guess?
to the tracks being disproven was actually by Sir Edmund Hillary. Many people know him because he's one of the two guys that got on Everest alongside Tenzing Norgay. Is my mic still working, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, Sir Edmund Hillary mountains for quite a long time, several years. And as he was studying the area, he kept also studying the local fauna and looking into the Yeti. And by the end, he concluded that Yeti was just a localized term for bears. Brown bears are pretty rare in the Himalayas. Most of the bears down there are Asiatic black bears. So the locals had two different terms for them. You had the horrible or the abominable bear, which might attack you. And then you had the other term for the little more mild-mannered black bear. And if you look at descriptions of Yetis, they sound suspiciously unape-like. They have claws, which no primate have. They got big canine teeth and sharp teeth around their mouth, which almost all apes are herbivores. They frequently run around on all fours. They actually are not strictly bipeds, but they are capable of standing upright. And what other animal do these locals know that stands upright?
Bear.
People.
Or people.
So if you're coming up with a word for an animal that acts somewhat like a person, you're going to compare it to a person. It's just that simple.
And you don't think that they...
One sec, my speakers are not working.
Oh, sorry.
I swear to God, I'm going to strangle Zoom. Okay, now it's good.
Sweet. So you don't think that the people there, the villagers and the locals and the indigenous people that live there forever, that they wouldn't have recognized the difference between a bear and this thing that they're creating these stories about? Like,
well, to them, there is a difference.
Yeah. And they couldn't relay
real...
that, but they couldn't like relay that. I guess I might not have been able to relay that information to these people that were making these assumptions of this like crazy creature.
Early 1900s, British explorers were not really in the business of getting corrected.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when the locals, when confronted with Yeti stuff, reacted pretty nonchalant about it. It wasn't any special animal. It was just another kind of animal that was out there.
So the Yeti's not a special animal to them, but Bigfoot, Sasquatch is special to indigenous cultures in America, though.
It varies, but many, yes. Some, no. Squamish people, for instance, it's definite yes, but to the Cherokee, it's just another animal.
Yeah, but is it its own animal separate from like a bear?
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I give the Sasquatch thing a leg up over the Yeti is the descriptions are a little bit more consistently primate-like, whereas the Yeti kind of veers into this: is it man? Is it bear? Is it man, bear, pig?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So your whole South Park joke here.
For me, I feel like it's more of a like, how would the Yeti live up in the mountaintops, where resources are a lot more scarce than down below, where Bigfoot is traditionally viewed as living like in the forest and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more of a chance that Bigfoot would actually be able to exist in their environment.
Well, keep in mind another thing with the Yeti, and this was stated by Tenzing Norgay, no less, is he knew both Eric Shipton and Edmund Hillary before he ascended Everest with Hillary. Is most Tibetans say that the Yeti doesn't necessarily live in the mountains, it just crosses between them, and it lives more in the forested valleys in between the mountains. It's just when they happen to be crossing through, that's when they're more liable to leave tracks.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
So now let's break down this Bigfoot Sasquatch thing, because I have no reason to not believe that it could be real, Yeah. Not yet anyway, until you, I'm sure, tell me otherwise.
Oh, Bigfoot's functionally impossible to disprove. And
Yes.
here's the thing I will say. The only way we could verify there is no North American primate, nor has there ever been a native North American primate, is to put 360-degree cameras around every single tree and every single rock at the same time and hire enough interns to look at them all at the same time.
Yeah. So
That's
just
the
because we
only way
can't
you
explore enough.
Yeah. You can't explore enough, and you can't really completely disprove it. It's Schrodinger's Bigfoot. Every tree in the forest simultaneously hides and doesn't hide a Sasquatch until proven otherwise.
Guess that's true. What do you have to say about all the evidence, quote unquote?
There's quite a lot that is convincing.
Yeah.
I will say that I have full respect for Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, as well as Lauren Coleman as an archivist, and Lyle Blackburn as another archivist. And to just clarify, my name might be Blackburn, but there's no relation that I know of between me and Lyle. I think we might be like distantly related, but I've never seen him at a family reunion, so I think he's from like a different branch of that
cool.
clan.
He's a Yeti, you're a Sasquatch, you know what I'm saying?
So he's a bear.
Oh, damn, I guess that would be different now. See, you twisted me all up, because this whole time I've been thinking Yeti's like so similar to a Sasquatch, but now it's not.
And I also want to go, I'll get back to the Yeti thing in a moment, because there is a bit of a caveat.
Okay.
Sasquatch makes sense. And what I mean by that is, say that there was an ape that traveled into North America sometime during the last ice age.
Mm.
We often get this image of Sasquatch as this big, bulky boss of the woods. Nobody can mess with him, short of like a really big wolf pack or an exceedingly big bear. But during the Ice Age, an 8 or 9 foot tall ape would actually be prey. You have packs of dire wolves that each weigh 200 pounds and can number over 40 individuals.
Fuck.
You have clans of saber-tooth, Smilodon, Fatalis, which can number 5, 10, 15 individuals, and each one of them weighs over 400 pounds.
Hold on real quick. Can I just...
Yeah.
So the cats were in clans? Like lions? Like actual lions?
Yeah, you call a group of cats a clan or a pride.
Yeah. So I don't know, because like mountain lions here don't really...
Yeah, they don't, but there's reason to assume at least some saber-tooths lived in groups.
Huh. That's cool.
At least some, not all.
Yeah.
And you also have the biggest land predator North America has ever seen since T-Rex. And that would be this nasty-looking fella called Arctodus.
Oh, sick name.
Arctodus. Sounds cool.
Jesus.
Name literally means terror bear.
Dude, that bear is so fucking big.
It's just like a giant ball of fur and muscle.
Yeah, their closest relation is actually the little mild-mannered spectacle bear from South America. But an average Arctodus was about the size of a record polar bear.
Oh, man.
You're talking 900,000 pounds for a boar very, very easily. Some of them probably up to a ton. 15 feet with a good reach.
That is crazy.
No way is a Sasquatch winning a fight with that thing.
No.
So,
No.
if you're a North American ape and you see 12 feet of no bear coming at you, you have two options. One is to die. Two is to go where the bear does not like to live. A lot of these North American megafauna did not live in dense woods. They like to live in the more open, scrubby areas because a lot of the big herbivores are grazers. They're eating grass, not bark and tree trunks and leaves. So if you're a North American ape and you're trying to avoid predators, probably the best way to avoid the bigger ones would go into the denser woods and evolve to be as extremely reclusive as you can. The moment you have a dangerous predator move into your area, you move out. You maybe live in a group for safety, but other times you're sticking it alone because that's less resource intensive.
Yeah.
Now, 25,000 years ago, another predator shows up in North America. That would be humans. Now, they're certainly not top dogs. The whole humans were the kings of the Ice Age. That's bunk.
Yeah.
But we certainly could be dangerous. A couple Clovis hunters with spears and atlatls is going to be a force to be reckoned with, and they have domestic dogs with them, which are going to be able to detect predators or potential threats coming into the camp before many animals know that the humans can spot them. So even though we got a pretty shit sense of smell, our canine companions can help us out there. So humans are also very dangerous. So what is a North American ape to do? Just keep avoiding them. It's got no reason to change its behavior, even when the Ice Age extinction happens and the big Arctodus bears, the big dire wolves, and the big saber-tooths are all gone. There's still humans out there, and if you have a winning strategy, why change?
No.
Don't engage them. Don't cause a ruckus. Don't attack them unless you absolutely have to. Just stay away. Another thing about it is there are very, very few reports of Sasquatch attacking somebody. And here's a weird thing about apes. Apes actually know we're apes. They can tell that we're also apes and that we're related. Because most of the time, apes are completely chill around humans. They think that we're just weird-looking members of their species.
Yeah.
You'll hear about chimpanzees going ballistic, but they're kind of a special case because they're in a very resource-low area where conflict is going to be very drastic because of how big their population is. Basically, the chimps are stuck in Fight Club.
Yeah.
Whereas bonobos, gorillas, orangutans, gibbons, they're completely chill around humans. So, if there were an unknown creature that was the responsible party for the Sasquatch legend, it makes sense that it would be an ape because it would see humans as related to itself and it wouldn't go out of its way to harm them. Both because it knows humans are dangerous and also because animals tend not to like to harm their own species unless they absolutely have to.
Right.
Now, there's a bit of a little funny catch-22 with the Bigfoot. I see two theories get thrown out. One is that it's Gigantopithecus. The other is that it's a hominin, meaning it's on the human branch.
Wouldn't Gigantopithecus have to be substantially bigger than Bigfoot sightings, right?
Gigantopithecus is big, but not King Kong sized.
Right, but I always thought it was like, isn't it like 12 plus feet tall?
About 12 for a really big male, but average you're looking at closer to about 9 to 10 feet.
Okay.
Another thing about Gigantopithecus is its total size is very hard to estimate because most of what the remains we have is just teeth and some jaws.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually blame porcupines for that because porcupines love to eat bones and they like to cache what they're eating in caves. And the only parts of the Giganto that were too tough for them to chew through were the jaws and the teeth. That's why we find a lot of Gigantopithecus fossils in porcupine dens in caves.
In North America?
In Asia.
In Asia.
North American porcupines, yeah, they like to eat bone too.
But we don't have any evidence of like some giant fossilized primate.
Nope, no ape fossils in North America.
That's right.
Well, there's a little bit of a caveat there.
Okay.
And that is some places in North America, particularly the dense wood, are really shit at making fossils. The soil's acidic. It's not a lot of sedimentary action to bury the fossil. Many times the animal's exposed to the elements, meaning scavengers are going to come at it pretty quick. Mm-hmm. There was a little examination done down here in Florida. And what they did was they took a dead deer, tied it to the ground, and staked it so they're making sure that nothing could pick it up and carry it off like a bear or a coyote. And they just saw how long it lasted. Within an hour of them staking it down, the blowflies had already come in. Then the possums, then the raccoons, then the coyotes. A bear showed up. And within about 2 days, the deer carcass was completely unrecognizable. You couldn't tell there was a dead deer there. The bones had gotten scattered. Everything got chewed up. No soft tissue left. No hair. Just scattered. So if an animal in North America was to avoid fossilizing, staying in the dense wilderness is probably the better bet, more particularly the dense deciduous forests, which is where most Sasquatch reports are. And if an animal is trying to avoid the big ice age predators, sticking to the deciduous forests is a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
But there's a problem with Gigantopithecus, and that's its diet. It is a lazy son of a bitch. It's basically an ape panda. It likes to eat bamboo, and that's just about it. Gigantopithecus, in fact, might not actually be quite as big as some thought it was, because it might just have had an abnormally big head for an ape because it was chewing on so much bamboo constantly.
So it need a lot of like surface area for muscle.
It need a lot of surface area for those big muscles to crack and process the tough bamboo. Gorillas have a similar thing, but not quite to the same extent.
Yeah.
So instead of 12 feet tall, Giganto might have been closer to 7, 8 feet tall. Still big, but not gigantic.
Let's see here.
But bamboo is a very temperature sensitive plant. It doesn't really grow in snowy areas all that much. So the whole thing of the Bering Land Bridge between North America and Asia, the Giganto would never cross that. They'd have no reason to. If they did, they'd run out of food.
Yeah.
And if you're a big, fat, bamboo munching panda ape, you're going to need to eat a lot of bamboo.
That's true.
God, just think about stepping up to an 8-foot tall ape. Oh my God.
Watch the remake of Disney's The Jungle Book. They made King Louie into a Gigantopithecus, and it is intimidating as all get out.
Yeah. So that's what they kind of like shaped him after. I was wondering. I was like, this is a big ass.
Yeah, Gigantopithecus is a pongonid, meaning it's closer to orangutans than anything else.
Mm.
So it would look like a big fat orangutan.
That's awesome.
That's another thing with the whole reason I doubt the Giganto side is pongonids have pretty consistent builds. They have a very distinctive face shape. They tend to have reddish fur. They didn't have a very broad cheek flanges like you see on male orangutans, and I never see that with Bigfoot reports.
Yeah.
In fact, one thing about Bigfoot reports is the females tend to be about the same size as the males. Maybe the males are a little bit bigger, but not by that much. And that's something different than most apes, with one exception. There is one type of ape, besides humans, where the males and the females are close to the same size. And coincidentally, this is also the only other ape that is a biped. And that is holobotids, aka gibbons. And have a look at this gibbon standing upright.
Okay. That's freaking cool. Oh, wow.
Now, ignore the fact that it's got abnormally big arms, because this is an animal that's adapted for living in the trees.
Yeah.
If you had a gibbon that was adapted to the ground, it wouldn't have those gigantic arms. It'd have big, but not huge. And unlike other apes, they are actually capable of running on their hind legs as well. Try this link out.
Okay, let me see this bad boy.
And if not, I will provide a YouTube link.
Yeah, if you could send that YouTube link, it's not letting me.
All right. I hate you, Zoom. I hate you so much.
What do you like better than Zoom?
I use Blackboard for a lot of the classes that I teach
Yeah.
and attend.
Yeah, Blackboard's good.
So, one moment. Of course, my internet starts bugging out right when I need it to. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's okay. Dude, I can't believe how big that Gigantopithecus is. I just can't, like, some of these animals, it's just hard to it's hard to put in your brain the size of them, because we just have nothing really to compare to today for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like hard to even imagine it. Okay, I'm pulling it up right now.
Because you're used to something completely different.
Yeah. All right, here we go. This dude took a knee. Get some water. Oh man, he's proficient at he's running.
He runs better than me.
And this is a arboreal animal. Gibbons almost never come on the ground because that's where all the predators are.
Yeah.
And yet, look how good they are at running.
Like, really well done. Like, no problem at all.
Like humans, they have a stride. And you also notice that unlike apes, like orangutans, gorillas, and chimps, they don't have that awkward side-to-side shuffle.
Yeah.
They can just easily book it on two legs if they have to.
That's crazy. Now, what I noticed different than the GIF that you sent.
The Patterson film.
He doesn't move his arms side to side.
Well, this is a 5-pound gibbon. It doesn't really need to keep shifting its weight to avoid toppling over.
That's true.
So, hypothetically speaking, let's look here. Holobotid fossils are actually very rare. They are, I had one primatologist friend basically say they're the black hole when it comes to paleoanthropology, because gibbons just popped up pretty recently in the fossil record, and we have nothing really connecting what was before that. We can look at genetics and see that they branched off from other apes sometime between 15 million and 12 million years ago. So, descending order, our relation is we're closest to chimpanzees and bonobos. And then after that, we're closest to gorillas as African apes. And then after that, we're closest to pangolins, which are Asiatic great apes, like the orangutan. And then after that, you're closer to holobotids, which are often called lesser apes, since gibbons tend to be on the small side. But hypothetically speaking, what if there was a relation of the gibbon that adapted to live on the ground? So it would be bigger. It would have to have wider feet because it has to support its weight on just the two legs. It would have to adapt a shifting stance where it's swinging its arms to help keep its balance and momentum in check. it would be pretty unsexually dimorphic because gibbons are monogamous. It's one male, one female, that's it. And that means that the males don't have to compete for mates, which means that their family unit can be smaller and more mobile. And the males don't have to be hypermasculine like gorilla males are with those huge canine teeth and the giant sagittal crest.
Yeah.
Also means they can be more mobile. If those gibbons start adapting to a colder environment, they're going to have to get bigger because bigger animals can better insulate against the cold. And we do know there were apes that could live in colder climates, like Dryopithecus was called a deciduous ape for a reason, because it was living in more hardwood forests. That would be an animal that would be in Eastern Asia sometime during the last ice age, and it would be capable of crossing Beringia into North America. So if I were to spitball that Sasquatch was any kind of primate, this is going to sound completely weird, but I would say it's actually a giant ground gibbon.
Huh. I've never thought about that. But that video looks very similar to the Patterson film. And yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's the substantial size difference. So, like, how long would it take for that thing to evolve to the Bigfoot size that we're looking at today from something as small as that gibbon?
Well, one thing is that keep in mind the modern gibbons would be evolving all this time as well, that this speculative creature would be evolving.
Yeah, right.
And the modern gibbons selectively evolve to be small because that allows them to be more agile in the trees. They don't have to worry about weighing down the branches.
Mm-hmm.
But size is actually one of the most plastic traits in animals, meaning it can change very quickly, very drastically if the circumstances are right. And the best example is a Haast's eagle.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned it earlier. The Haast's eagle was the biggest eagle ever. This is an eagle that could kill a man. Yet its closest living relative is 1/20th as heavy. And these two animals diverged only a few million years ago. 10 million tops.
Jeez, that's a big set of talons.
Yeah, but by comparison, I think the current estimates for the Haast's eagle's size weigh around 35 to 40 pounds. Keep in mind, eagles are extremely lightweight for their size.
Yeah.
So a 40-pound eagle is about the size of a sheep.
Wow.
But by comparison, its closest living relative is called a little eagle for a reason, and little eagles only weigh about a pound. So within
super big size difference.
Less than 10 million years, it ended up 40 times heavier than it was before.
Yeah.
So if you have...
Go ahead.
Go on. No, go on.
So then the idea is that as they're getting bigger, they're able to survive in different environments. And so the ones that are happening to get larger and larger are able to move into these different ecosystems that can continue the growth of this whatever species we're talking about.
Whereas their more southern cousins would double down on getting smaller and smaller so they could better adapt to being so agile in the trees.
Yeah.
And you basically have two divergent lines from the same origin point. And 10 million years is a lot of time to change. We and gorillas only have about 7 million years splitting us apart, and yet look how different we look.
Guess that's true.
And bipedalism has actually evolved in primates at least 3 times. Once in hominins, the ancestors of man.
Mm-hmm.
Once in holobotids, ancestors of gibbons. And another time in some Asiatic and European apes like Oreopithecus, which were small and relatively gibbon-like to chimpanzee-like. They were also mostly bipeds.
Now, is there an issue with this giant Bigfoot being a biped because of his size? Like, don't most like megafauna, essentially in this, I guess, could be classified as megafauna, aren't they normally quadrupeds due to just weight disbursement?
Usually, yes, but there can also be exceptions.
Yeah.
And bipedalism is not necessarily a worse form for supporting your weight. After all, so the biggest meat-eating dinosaurs like Giganotosaurus and Tyrannosaurus were both over 8 tons at the biggest, and they were bipeds.
Wasn't it the way that they were shaped, though, helped them like do that? Like we're talking about a thing that's standing pretty much upright.
It did, but another thing about the whole Sasquatch thing is I don't think they're necessarily as big as some people say they are.
Okay.
Some video analysis on the Patterson-Gimlin film where they were able to identify a rock and some trees in the background and get a decent idea how big the animal was. It was very well done. They actually recreated the camera. They found the right lens they were using. They looked through Patterson's notes to find the right model, right frame rate. And they determined that the subject in the film was somewhere in the ballpark of 6.5 to 7.5 feet tall.
Okay, big but not massive.
Big, but then I look at reports saying, oh, this Bigfoot was 12 feet tall. And I go,
yeah,
are you sure about that?
Because that's what I'm kind of used to associating with, is like somewhere in that 10 to 12 foot range.
Yeah, I would say that it's not impossible. You could get a freakishly big individual that's huge. I mean, after all, grizzly bears average 250, 400 pounds, yet that doesn't stop. Once in a blue moon, you get a monster that's over 500 pounds. Yeah. So there's going to be a range, but I would say the most reliable Bigfoot reports I've heard average out close to 6.5 to 8.5 feet tall.
So do you think that makes it out of range to be fake most of the time?
I think the Patterson film shows something. Now, can we say that something is physically impossible for it to have been a guy in a suit? Not necessarily. No. There are guys that are that big. There are ways you can train your body to move in that way if you're very well trained. There are ways you can make a suit that looks like that. But my question is, are those within the capability of Roger Patterson?
Yeah.
If he was in financial straits and yet he could somehow make a Bigfoot suit more convincing than the Planet of the Apes movie monsters, what was he doing wasting his money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And why wasn't he hired for movies?
Yeah. So
it's like the thing doesn't look too terribly fake to me. You could generally spot, even with today's costumes, like you can generally spot without CGI a fake gorilla outfit. You know what I'm saying? It's not hard.
Though keep in mind, with the age of the film, some of the, for lack of better terms, fakeness might be covered up by the pixelation.
Yeah, that's true. Should I pull that up again?
Yeah, if you want to. There is also one thing about Gigantopithecus I also want to stamp down. That thing was definitely not a biped.
So it was a quadruped.
It was almost certainly a quadruped. You can generally tell if an ape was a biped by looking at the jaw. The way that the lower jaw will flare out towards the back is different than in bipeds versus quadrupeds.
Yeah.
And in Gigantopithecus, it definitely has a jaw more like an orangutan or a gorilla.
Okay. That makes sense.
It's a big fat orangutan.
So it could get up on its hind legs, but it wouldn't be walking. That wouldn't be its source of mobility.
If it was walking on its hind legs, it probably would be shuffling a lot like gorillas do when they walk on their hind legs. Mm-hmm. Which they can get a brisk stride. I mean, don't get me wrong, they can walk pretty well, but they can't keep it up, and they definitely can't run quite like that. I have a rather comedic looking gif of a gorilla doing such. I don't know what he saw, but apparently he didn't like looking at it.
Oh my god.
But you can also see it's got that side to side waddle that the gibbon didn't have.
And he definitely moves his arms.
Mm-hmm. When you get bigger, you kind of just need to start pumping your arms like that to get your stride right.
And the clear difference there is that dude's legs are so much shorter than the other film.
They look They look heckin' silly walking on their hind legs. I've been around gorillas and they look hilarious when they walk on their hind legs.
Yeah.
How the heck were we ever scared of these things?
Yeah. Because they could rip you off the ground and throw you through the air like you're nothing.
That's right.
I mean, they could, but they never would.
I know. I always see that video of that photographer that they're out there just like perfectly still, just taking pictures of family, these gorillas, and the one as he's walking by just grabs him by the leg and just barely looks like he's doing anything to him, just as walking normal, grabs this dude by the leg and he just gets dragged down the trail a little bit. And the gorilla looks like it wasted zero energy.
It probably didn't. I've also seen a video of another photographer who was just standing still, and this family of gorillas with the babies, the moms, and even the silverback just came out and were just checking him out. He's just standing still because he doesn't want to startle the kids, and the silverback actually later on basically pulls one of the babies off and was like, okay, stop harassing the human. Come on, we're leaving.
So smart.
The kids were like checking him out, seeing like, hey, what's up with your fur? Where'd all it go?
One thing I noticed about that video is that thing is thick. It's like really big, like big, wide, from front to back big. Would that be common? Would that be a requirement because it lives in generally like these northwestern areas and high altitude and super cold environments where they might need like extra layers of fat or?
Yeah. Big animals in general can insulate against the cold much better. Have you ever noticed that mammals, once they tend to breach about 2 or 3 tons, tend to lose all their hair?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least most of it. Elephants, of course, still have hair. And that's because sheer body mass actually generates some heat. It's called gigantothermy. You can even see it in reptiles when they get big enough. Sea turtles, for instance, are always going to be a couple degrees warmer than the water around them just because they got such mass to them, especially the big leatherback sea turtles. So if you're really big, gigantothermy kicks in, so you're generating heat on top of already generating heat because you're warm-blooded, on top of living in a warm area. You're going to need to shed a lot of that heat in some way, and one of the ways is losing your hair.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, if you're in a cold area, getting big actually is a better adaptation because body mass can insulate you against the cold much better.
Really?
Have you ever seen a Neanderthal skeleton compared to a human skeleton?
Yes.
Well, you'll notice with them that their skeletons and ours, our body masses are actually pretty comparable to each other. We weigh about the same. Mm-hmm. But they're shorter and they're a lot thicker because
like a wider kind of like structure, right?
Yeah, wider rib cage because that gives them more mass compared to their surface area. We lose a lot of heat because we got long, skinny limbs and we don't got a lot of thick core. Whereas their surface area is less, but their mass is about the same, meaning their core is better insulated. I would expect a North American ape would be built pretty similar, especially one that lives in the cold. And you also see this with reports. The southern falcon monsters, skunk apes, tend not to be quite as big and beefy as the, say, Pacific Northwest and the Rocky Mountain Sasquatches. Mm-hmm. That would make sense. In nature, we call this Bergham's rule. That's the reason that little Mexican gray wolves are not nearly as big as Alaskan timber wolves. So if you had an ape living in a more temperate, colder area, yeah, it probably would get bigger.
That's fascinating. And there's no other real record of like apes living in cooler climates though, right? Or like primates living in cooler climates.
Yeah, there are a few. For instance, one of the bigger types of macaques is called a snow monkey. You might, if you're watching a lot of nature documentaries, you might see them a lot because the Japanese population likes to dunk into hot springs. Yeah, they'll just chill out in the hot springs during the colder parts of the winter.
Yep.
Here's a picture. So primates can tolerate the cold. And we also have fossils of apes like Dryopithecus, which was living in areas that were snowing during parts of the year.
Okay.
And
gorillas also can tolerate the cold pretty well.
Oh yeah, I've seen video and pictures of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mountain gorillas live in areas that can get below freezing, so they can take the cold pretty well.
Okay.
It just takes the right kind of adaptations.
What do you think the diet would consist of this supposed Bigfoot?
Well, gibbons are probably one of the most generalized of all primates, so I think they're a pretty good baseline. Gibbons eat leaves, they eat fruit, they'll catch birds, they'll eat bugs, they'll eat eggs, they'll eat anything they can get their hands on. So the diet would be yes.
One thing, so that makes sense that they could definitely survive pretty much. Essentially, in theory, they could survive in a very wide range of places. One thing that I've always been curious about is that I've seen that people have always are finding these like footprints and they're making casts of them, and I've seen that, you know, the videos and the photos. But how come no one's ever found any excrement of these animals? Because it should be clearly different than any excrement of a bear, ungulate, or, you know, anything like that. It would be closer to like a human style. So wouldn't we assume that someone somewhere would find some kind of scat that looks like a massive human? Like,
just find a big human dump in the woods somewhere.
That's what I'm questioning, because when we're out, like when I used to hunt or when I'm out even backpacking or hiking, like, we can identify animals by their scat, and it's everywhere. You know, we find it all over the place.
Well, one thing about apes is they tend to be pretty clean animals, all things considered. They might pick a special area to go to the bathroom. It's not like they have a specific spot they always go to, but they don't basically broadcast their scat like other animals do. Mm-hmm. A bear will leave theirs out in the open because that's a message to other bears of, hey, this is my spot. Whereas more reclusive animals might say dig up a small piece of ground and go there, go in the bushes.
Do you think that would apply even if they were nomadic?
Probably would, and if it is an ape, its scat probably would look pretty close to a human's poop, and I don't recall many Finding Bigfoot episodes where the BFRO went looking for what looked like big human turds in the forest.
Yeah, but that's what I'm questioning, those, because I feel like you'd be walking through the forest, you see a human turd, and you're like, okay, this is weird. That's right here.
Why is this human turd in the middle of nowhere?
Who took a shit in my property?
Yeah.
So rude.
Yeah, but no one ever talks about Bigfoot poop. I just, you know.
Oh, another thing is, when you're out hunting, what kind of poop do you see more often? Herbivore poop or carnivore poop?
Definitely herbivore.
Well, if you're an omnivore, poop tends to break down a lot quicker.
Okay.
Herbivores, even the rudiments, which have a really good digestive tract with the multiple stomachs and chewing cud, the plant material they eat is just so dense and fibrous that it doesn't all break down, so it tends to take longer to decay away. Conversely, omnivore and carnivore poop tends to break down quite quickly. So unless it's put in a spot where it's not going to decompose as quickly, like on top of a log or on top of a rock, it's going to go away within a few days.
Okay, that makes sense.
Especially if you have an animal that's trying to be indiscriminate about where it goes.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about we're talking about an animal that is consciously making a decision to hide.
Yep.
And to make sure that people don't know where it is or where it's going.
Here's something with apes is they are actually smarter than we are in a couple ways. They did a memory test on adult humans, infants, chimpanzees, and what it was they had a 5x5 grid, and on this grid a square would light up in a sequence, so you get, say, top, right, middle, center, lower, left to the right, etc. And there were a key code of about 10 squares, and you were supposed to tap on them in the sequence you remember, and if you did, you got a reward. None of the adult humans could get it. None of the toddlers could get it. Chimpanzees can nail it almost every single time. Because while they don't have the same cognitive functions we do for language, coordination, forward thinking, future aspects, tool use, etc., their short-term memory and sensory input is way faster than ours.
Mm-hmm.
So every time that a chimpanzee or a gorilla is registering stuff in the woods and a human's watching them, they know more than the human does in the short term.
Okay.
They can already say, okay, if I need to go away, I can go this way, this way, this way, this way, and this way. The human's over there, looks like a large adult male, possible threat level judgment, maybe keep the kids away from it, but he doesn't look too dangerous. He's not carrying anything, so it's not a weapon. Meanwhile, the human, 2 seconds into it, is going, oh, look, a gorilla.
So that would make sense then on how they're so easily able to evade people, is they're just able to process the current situation much faster than we can.
Unless you really took them by surprise, they would know that you're there way before you would.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we can even find apes in Asia and Africa is they don't register us as a threat. And unfortunately, this is why poaching is such a big problem. Because a troop of gorillas doesn't think a human's anything to be worried about. After all, they're like us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans. But if you did have an ape, which for some reason or another registered threat to itself, they would do everything in their power to stay away. And we know this because the few times when, say, researchers are finding a troop of apes that is actively trying to hide, they can't find them. They just stay 2 steps ahead of the humans every single time. They can only be found if they want to be found. And I'm talking about a group of 20, 40 orangutans or gorillas or chimpanzees.
Yeah.
Sorry, bonobos, gorillas, or chimps, orangutans are solitary.
So we're talking substantive like mass overall that's just able to easily escape our vision. Yeah.
During the Bush Wars in parts of the Congo, entire troops of chimpanzees just on a dime suddenly switched to being nocturnal.
Really?
Because they knew that's a way they could avoid people. Since they realized all these people are killing each other and they're killing us, we need to stay out of the way.
Dude, that's
a hell of a skill.
Dude, oh my God.
So we have actually just approached the over 2 hour mark. So
I need to know, do you think that the Bigfoot is real?
I would say if it did turn out to be real, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest.
Okay. And your best bet would be a gibbon style or like a somewhat of a
something
ancestor or relation to.
I would think that if it's related to any apes, it's probably closest to the gibbons. And I could say one thing, as I go through my archaeology and I go through these big collections of bones from various archaeologic sites and middens, I'm going to keep an eye out, because if I find a single finger bone that's definitely primate but looks a little bit different than a human's, I'm going to put that one in a special spot for some research.
Yeah. Man, that's so fascinating.
Bigfoot makes a lot of sense in many regards.
Do you think we have enough evidence, and is the evidence good enough to say that we're pretty close to being able to confirm to a degree that there is some sort of species of animal out there that we just don't know about, but is probably this thing? Like, can we stop with the whole, there's no way this thing is real?
No scientist would ever, in their good conscience, say Bigfoot is 100% fake.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same token, science must be repeatable.
Yeah.
I would say, at the best and at the most optimal, Sasquatch has been identified, but it has not been verified. Science has to be repeatable. And repetition means eliminating all other possibilities. That's why we use Occam's razor so much in science.
Mm-hmm.
The Patterson-Gimlin film is very telling of something. but we can't physically pull whatever in that film out and see, is it a guy in a monkey suit? Is it an ape? Is it something else entirely?
Yeah.
That's why we would need verifiable DNA evidence, and a lot of it, a body, a live specimen. I know that's something saying verbatim, and there's an often statement in cryptozoology of absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Mm-hmm.
My caveat that is evidence of evidence is not anything relating to absence at all. Absence is not evidence. So just because you say we don't have it yet, therefore it exists, is not factual. You can't say that.
Yeah.
Unless we have something that cannot be disproven, it cannot be proven.
I believe. I mean, for me personally, I feel like it's definitely more reasonable than not to think that there could be. There's just, when I go backpacking in Montana sometimes, it's just the vast wilderness that we find ourselves in, and we can barely even get to the deepest parts of it. You know what I mean? Like, just the sheer space and territory that is not, like, primarily resided in by humans. Like, I just don't see why there couldn't be. I don't know. Ryan, do you think it's real?
There's one little bit I think I can leave you on.
Okay.
Something else about other apes is, aside from us very chatty humans, they don't tend to make a lot of noise. Except for a few. Have a listen to this gibbon call.
Yes.
And then listen to some of the reported Sasquatch sounds, like the Sierra calls, the 1976 recording.
Okay.
So think on the call you're about to hear, and now imagine it coming from an animal with a much, much deeper voice because it's much, much bigger.
Oh, dude, that thing is awesome. I'm gonna watch it one more time. And what's cool too is I noticed that the gibbon has what can be perceived as black eyes, and a lot of the reports of Bigfoot and Sasquatch are black-eyed creatures.
Black eyes. And something I have heard a few times is white eye patches around the eyes, or white flanges where it looks like it's got a beard or a mustache.
Wow.
Here, let me play back that gibbon call for you, but much deeper.
Okay.
So let me just say, so many animals, when they get bigger, their voices deepen. This is one of the reasons that men typically have a deeper voice than women.
Yeah.
So in this case, let me just pull it up. And this is just me jerry-rigging something off the top of my head. Try this out.
Cool. It's downloading right now. Can you hear that?
Oh, yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And this is me like making it very, very off the top of my head. If you gave me more time to add some resonance to it, I guarantee you I could make this sound just like the 1976 call.
Crazy.
And the thing is, gibbons are the most vocal apes because they're the only monogamous ones aside from man. So the way that a mated pair keep track of each other when they spread out is they call out to each other, usually at night.
So that explains some of this, the audio like evidence that people have, or that they say they hear these like sounds that they describe very similar to that.
Mm-hmm. And gibbons got a flat face just like a man.
Mm-hmm.
They walk bipedally just like a man. They tend to be pretty shy and not really harmful at all to people. In fact, there's a reason that before we found the good fossils of the African apes that gave rise to man, like Australopithecus and Ardipithecus, most scientists during the early 1900s thought we were closer to gibbons than anything else because they seemed so human-like.
Dude, that's crazy. Well, you blew my mind tonight, and yeah, so much stuff I never even thought about. I never would have like connected the dots between Bigfoot and a gibbon, like ever.
That's true. I wouldn't have either. So
It's brilliant.
this is great. This has been really great. Very informative.
You're welcome.
Dude, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
I would love
Thank
to
you
have
for
on
letting me
another
yammer
time.
for about 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, anytime. If you ever have anything else you want to talk about, I'm into it. Just let me know. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Very
do you
welcome.
have anything like a website or anything that you want people to check out, or anything you want to leave people with?
I don't really have a website, but
Yep.
if you're ever in Cocoa Beach, Florida, check out Museum of Dinosaurs and Ancient Cultures. We got a little bit of something for everybody.
Okay, will do.
Want to see a
Sounds
50-foot Giganotosaurus? We got that. Want to see a perfect recreation of King Tut's tomb? Got that. Want to see a 5,000-year-old jade sculpture? Got that too.
Dude, I actually want to see all of those things.
All of them. I want to see
I'll
all
hit
of
you up
them.
when I come to Florida.
All right.
Sweet. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great night.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
thank
I wish you
John.
all the best. Thank you very much for having me on, Ryan, Jesse.